Micro-ATX. Micro-ATX doesn't get enough love. I would go so far as to say that Micro-ATX is the new ITX for people that are tired of ITX's nonsense. Okay, sure, it's a little bit of a calling, it's a little bit of a midlife crisis. I'm going to cram 16 cores in a tiny little package and it's going to be super awesome and it's going to be water cooled. Yeah, I've done that build. I've done those videos. It is a lot of fun. Maintenance is not a lot of fun. The build is not easy. You got to be fairly experienced or paint by numbers with some parts that somebody else has already figured out. Micro-ATX, on the other hand, is pretty easy. Micro-ATX is a first-time build, no problem. And I'm not saying that ITX is hard as a first-time build. I'm just saying that a compact build with ITX, you can go pretty nuts. But you don't have to go off the reservation at all in order to get a really nice system that's Micro-ATX. So to that end, we've got our ASRock B660M Steel Legend and our Prime B660M D4 because, you saw the title, Fractal's launching new cases today. The Meshify 2 Mini and the Define 7 Mini. We'll start with the Define 7 Mini because I think you know what you're getting into with the Meshify 2 Mini. Sound dampening material and dust filtration on our nice metal front panel. Now the Define 7 and I have a long history. In fact, the Define 7 XL is one of my favorite cases for building. I like it so much that I made mine wood grain because, well, I like wood grain. This is easily moddable as well. I could probably do that with this. So this is a Micro-ATX case. It's tiny, it's portable, you can carry it. It has a tempered glass side panel. It's available in a bunch of colors. I've got the black one with the light tint on the tempered glass. There's a bunch of configurations available. And this has pretty much all the features that you'd expect for the Define 7, except it's Micro-ATX. Now it is 4-slot at the back. There are some Micro-ATX cases out there that are 5-slot. But there's not really a lot of Micro-ATX motherboards on the market that give you 2x16 slots wired to the CPU so that you could run dual GPUs. In fact, dual GPUs, not really much of a thing. There's a couple people on the Level 1 forum that have built really amazing systems for GPU pass-through in an ATX configuration in systems that have a Micro-ATX motherboard with the by 8x8 configuration, and that is really impressive. But yeah, I mean, maybe step it up to ATX if you're going to do something that fancy. But otherwise, it's still the same feature set. You've got the top dust filter if you're going to use this as an intake. This part is removable, which makes motherboard and radiator installation pretty easy. Sound dampened side panels, sound dampened front. Sound dampened top comes pre-installed. It's designed to work with a standard size ATX power supply, but of course, it will work with SFF or SFFL power supplies. It has built-in USB Type-C, 2 5 gigabit or USB 3.0 Gen 1 ports, and 2 Type-A USB 2.0 ports. Now in the accessory box, we've got our mini user guide. And if you are going to rock the top as intake, because remember, sound dampening, you've got the mesh top, which is that same fractal design aesthetic. Toolless. You're good to go. And then you get the accessory box, which includes your mounting screws, your hard drive dampeners if you're going to install mechanical hard drives, a couple extra motherboard standoffs, power supply screws, drive screws, and cable ties. Now it comes with two 2.5-inch drive positions at the rear. That is for a maximum of 8 millimeters. So 8 millimeter drive is a height. If you're going to put, like an Optane U.2 back there, or do my crazy P4500 drive hack, 8 millimeters, it's not going to fit in the motherboard tray. Motherboard tray sits too close to the outside of the case. Not going to work. But there are other 2.5-inch drive mounting options. This thing includes 2 fans, one 120mm at the back and one 140mm at the front. Now the GPU max length is 306mm at the front if you have a front fan installed. If you go for the radiator, your GPU length is going to be more in the order of like 280mm, 270mm. Depending on the thickness of your radiator. So keep that in mind when you're doing this build. I will call out the 2 3.5-inch bays that are installed in the bottom here. You can also use those for SSDs or the aforementioned U.2. If you're thinking, hey, I think I could shove a 360mm radiator there in the front. No, this is going to get in the way of the front panel connections. It's not quite going to work. It might work if you get creative, but probably not. Now me personally, a case like this on top of the desk, I like the aesthetic and I like the fact that it's not absurdly huge. So we got by default the 2.5-inch trays are installed here at the back, but you know, these Fractal mounting options are pretty universal. You can order more online, but if you are gonna, you know, you want to show off the fact that you've got a P5000X octane because those are end of life and going away forever and blah blah blah. There you go. Now if you've got a lot of PCIe peripherals, that's going to interfere, but generally that is going to work. It's going to work really well. Last thing, there are pre-installed Velcro cable straps for cable management, which is always a nice touch. Thanks, Fractal. Now remember I said this is Micro-ATX, but there's no reason that you couldn't use an ITX motherboard in here. If there's an ITX motherboard that's caught your eye and you really like it, but you don't want to build a super knuckle scratching tiny build that's really inconvenient, well, put it in here. It'll be fine. So let's take a look at the Meshify 2 if you need an absurd amount of airflow. So my recommendation for the Meshify 2 is, especially if you're considering not going with the sound dampened top panel on the Define 7 Mini, well, you need to be looking at the Meshify. Not using the sound dampened top panel, you lose out on some of the sound dampening characteristics of this case. Yeah, you still got the one sound dampening side panel in the side. There probably is going to be a version of this that's dual dampened side panels. I certainly like that in the original Define. And the front is sound dampened, pulling air in from the side. But the Meshify is not bad if the fans aren't running super high. Now you'll notice some differences right away with the Meshify 2. We still got the top USB-C and the 5 gigabit USB type A ports, 2 of them, but there's no USB 2.0 ports. We still have headphone, microphone, just the same as our other case, but yeah, none of the other stuff. Tempered glass side panel. This is the dark tint. Dark. The top is a mesh, hence the name, Meshify. See what they did there? I see what they did there. There's only the one style top because, hey, it includes the dust filter because they don't know if you're going to run it as an intake or an exhaust. If it's an exhaust, you know, you can do away with this. It's fine. Now at the front, look at that. It's a door that opens so that you can do dust filter cleaning. Like the Define 7, you get the 140 in the front and the 120 in the back. This one, no sound dampening on this side panel, but otherwise the feature set should look familiar to you. This has the same 167mm CPU cooler clearance, 306mm with the front fan, and again like 270, 280mm clearance with a thick 280mm front radiator. You can run a 240 in the top, 120s in the bottom or the back. You got options. Now, as with most things Fractal, there are optional accessories that you can buy. Like you can buy more 2.5-inch hard drive mounts, you can buy more 3.5-inch hard drive mounts. There is some opportunity to cram some more connectivity in here. I recommend you check out the manual because that's published online. You can get that before you have the case. You can download the PDF, and Fractal's really good about giving you configuration ideas. In my mind, 280mm front radiator is basically the thing to do with either one of these configurations. The Meshify 2, you can obviously configure for a lot more airflow. So like your i9, your Ryzen 9 5950X would be great in something like this. A lot of airflow, pretty quiet, it'll work well. I think with something like this, you know, the Ryzen 5950X, again, it doesn't use that much power, would be fine in the Define 7. This has been a quick look at the new Define 7 Mini and the Meshify 2 Mini, which, you know, it's Fractal, and I don't really see anything to be super concerned about here. It's the same Fractal build quality as far as I can tell. I mean, even just banging on it, you can tell that it's soundproofed. It seems like they've done a pretty good job putting these together. I'm really happy with the price points. Here's a table of all the cases that are launching today and their various price points. Considering the global situation and how much everything else has gone up and blah, 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 yeah. And like I say, building a Micro-ATX system, there's not really a lot of compromises there. You can get some pretty high-end Micro-ATX motherboards, and typically Micro-ATX motherboards are going to be a little cheaper than their ATX counterparts. Feature for feature, well, that's not necessarily true. It depends on the feature. But for a lot of the features, the Micro-ATX motherboard ends up being a little less expensive. And the nice thing about Micro-ATX is you have 4 memory slots and lots more room for accessories. On ITX, they got to cut out a lot. Typically 2 of the memory slots and a lot more than that. So Micro-ATX is sort of the sweet spot of price, performance, options, a lot of stuff. I think you should look at Micro-ATX for a compact and powerful build, but that also isn't needlessly expensive, because being tiny costs a lot. Alright, I'm Wendell, this is Level 1. I'm signing out. You can find me in the Level 1 forums. Hey, if you do a build with one of these, come show it off. Let's see it. Share it with the community. Alright, I'm signing out. I'll see you there.